Chairman, we're now live.
A warm welcome to those attending and our viewers watching live on the Council's YouTube channel here in London, and a Happy New Year. My name is Councillor Higgins. I'm the Chairman of this committee. Details of business are to be considered today are shown on the agendas, copies of which are accessible online under the live broadcast. For those presenting in the room and intending to speak, please note that you will be filmed and any statement you make will be recorded and made public. A reminder to anybody speaking today that your voice will only be audible as long as the microphone button is switched on. Fire alarms, we'll go to a bit of housekeeping first. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm does go off, please follow officers to the fire exits and out of the building to designated meeting points. If you have your mobiles or your tablets, please, in this room, can you make sure they're turned off? Please note that councillors and the committee may use their laptops or tablets during the meeting to view the agenda. We go to attendees. Councillor Tuckwell is on my right there, my Vice Chairman, and Councillor Morse. See, I saw you this time, my opposite lead. Councillor Chapman has I'll ask for apologies again, but I'll just say them anyway. Councillor Chapman's just phoned in sick. Councillor Dillon is running late. Nicola Brightman's running late, and welcome Alan Kaufman to the meeting. Our planning and our legal team is here today to give me advice and make sure we do everything correctly. First, my planning officer is Kate Cosby. Thank you, very welcome. My planning manager is Ros Johnson. Principal Planning Officer Nisha Bone, Transport Officer Alan Tilley, Legal Advisor Kerry Monroe, and obviously to my left is Liz, Liz Penny, if I couldn't do any of this without you. Thank you very much. So, although I sort of mentioned it, we'll go through the proper agenda, so apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillor Shariah Ahmed-Walana, and unfortunately Councillor Alan Chapman was substituting, but he's unwell. We've also received apologies from Councillor Mahinda Bira, with Councillor Jazz Dillon substituting, who is on his way, will be shortly, and Councillor Nicola Brightman is also running a little late. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Declarations of interest. Yes, Councillor Tuttle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest in item, I think it's 8. Yeah, item 8 this evening. The reason being is I have very close relatives in a short distance from this site, so I will be absenting myself from the room.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
We like to have everything open and thing. Do we agree to the minutes of the last meeting? Agreed. Great. There's another item that we've just Liz is going to explain a bit more about. Is a temporary COVID protocol update. So I'm going to hand over to Liz.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So under the additional items, the matters that have been marked urgent or in advance, we have an item that was circulated to members yesterday for consideration and for voting on. It's a temporary COVID-19 protocol for written representation, standardisation of time limits report, which you should have in front of you. So it is an additional item added to this agenda. The main focus of it is to, as it states, standardise the time limit for written reps and for people attending in person. So we did have a slightly different anomaly when we had virtual meetings, but just to make life easier, we're going to standardise things and have them at 48 hours. That means that anybody submitting additional information will have to do so within 48 hours of the meeting, a minimum of 48 hours beforehand. So that will be consistent with people in the room. In addition to this, there's been a few other very small amendments in terms of legal services advice around privacy, not permitting images that show people in them, and also a general tidy up of the protocol by Democratic Services without changing any material aspects. So it was really just for the committee to hopefully consider and approve if necessary this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz. We have to take a vote on that, so are we all agreed on that one? Yeah, agreed? Yeah, please, thank you. Okay, just to confirm that all items are in public. There's no private reports tonight. I'm going to just go through roughly for petitioners exactly what the protocol is on. We've got 3 petition items tonight. Basically, a planning officer will present the application on the screen behind to the side of us. Any public petitions, written representations on this item will be presented by them, the petitioner, applicant, agents, or read out by Democratic Services, or Liz, as I would say. Any Ward Council comments will then follow, and then a discussion by councillors and questions and comments from officers. We might ask questions of the petitioner. It's our right to, but we might not, so don't be offended if we don't. And then to confirm, we will either approve or refuse the item. And that's how we will run the petitions going forward. So we're going to start off with item 6, which is 49 Beach Avenue, Ruislip. Just before I start that, sorry, if the councillors do come in the middle of this application, they will not be able to vote. So don't be, when I say no, you can't vote. Okay. Nisha, can you take us away?
Thank you, Chairman. Item 6, 49 Beach Avenue. This application proposes the replacement of an existing bungalow with a 2.5-storey building comprising 4 self-contained flats, parking, landscaping works, and the widening of the vehicle crossovers to the front of the site. The proposed housing mix is 1 one-bedroom flat and 3 two-bedroom flats. Members should note that the agent submitted revised drawings yesterday to Democratic Services showing changes to the front site layout. Officers are of the opinion that the revised layout does not sufficiently address the ground floor refusal, and this will be discussed in further detail towards the end of the presentation by Ross Johnson. Here is the site location plan, bird's eye view, constraints plan, photo of the existing property at the site, the neighbouring property at number 51, the other neighbouring property at number 47, which is a bungalow with a side dormer, and the rear elevation of the application site. So the plan on the left-hand side was the current version of the proposed site layout that was submitted with the application, but as mentioned, the agent has since revised that layout. The key changes is to do with the site frontage. The footpath has been removed, so that will be explained to you, and you will also get the opportunity to see the revised layout when Ross takes you through the revised amendments. On the right-hand side was the previously refused scheme. It was refused in 2020 and it was dismissed at appeal. So these are the existing floor plans of the property at the moment, existing elevations, proposed elevations, the proposed street scene, and then I just want to talk you through the layout, so just bear with me. So the internal layout hasn't been amended, although we have received revised drawings. So you have 2 flats on the ground floor, and that's on your left-hand side. And on the right-hand side is the ground floor layout of the previous scheme, which also had 2 flats on the ground floor. Officers are of the view that this current application has addressed the previous grounds for refusal in respect to noise and disturbance to the neighbouring occupiers at number 47 by removing the side driveway and the rear car parking spaces. So if you look to the right-hand side, you'll see there's a driveway running along the left-hand side that has now been removed. So the applicant has addressed the previous grounds for refusal in terms of noise and disturbance, and also the previous rear car parking spaces have been omitted from the schemes, and instead all the proposed car parking spaces are now located at the front of the site. It should also be noted, if I go back to the elevations, the dimensions and design of the proposed building is almost identical to the previous scheme. The only difference is the reduction to the ridge height of 40 centimetres. In terms of resident consultation, the council received 7 objections from residents, an objection from Cavendish Ward councillors, an objection from Eastcote Residents Association, and a petition against the application with 63 signatories. These objections primarily concern the impact on neighbouring residential amenity, harm to the character and appearance of the area, and street parking pressure. These representations have been acknowledged in Section 6 of the committee report. The ground for refusal noted in the committee report is as follows. The proposed development, by virtue of the proposed footway, if I just actually go back to the plans, so if you look where the pointer is, I've lost it. Here we go. So this footway we're talking about. So the proposed development, by virtue of the proposed footway and on-site car parking spaces directly in front of the main habitable room windows serving flats 1 and 2, would cause unacceptable noise, disturbance, overlooking and a loss of privacy, both real and perceived, for the future occupants of these flats. This wording will have to be slightly adjusted to reflect the revised drawings that have been submitted by the agent. I will now defer to Ross Johnson, who will discuss the revised drawings in further detail. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. As Nisha has noted, so we did receive a revised drawing yesterday evening. The council has some options in terms of whether it considers this drawing or whether it decides that actually it was received too late in the day for the council to consider. Having looked at it and discussed it today, officers are of the view that it is likely if the application was refused and an appeal was lodged that this drawing would be submitted, so we feel that it's sensible to have regard to it today in the committee. So the drawing attempts to overcome officers' proposed reason for refusal, and it attempts to do that by omitting the footpaths from in front of the windows in the red sort of hashed area there. Now, officers don't feel that it fully addresses the concern. In fact, we feel in some ways it sort of adds another element to the concern. So the issue we've got here, the proposed refusal reason, relates to the proposal having a substandard form of accommodation to the detriment of the amenity of the future occupiers. And as worded in the report, that particularly related to sort of overlooking through the footpath into the windows. Now, as you can see on the revised drawing, the omission of the footpath sort of creates a further issue in that the residents from the upper floor flats will now have a sort of impractical layout in terms of how they reach their rear garden, so they'd need to sort of go right to the footway and around the cars, and on the sort of on the bottom sort of element of the screen you can see there's no footpath there. To get around to the side they'd have to walk past the parked vehicles. And as you can see, the cars would still be parked in close proximity to those windows, so there would still be an element of disturbance as people got in and out. So overall, officers don't feel that it has addressed the concern, and it's sort of slightly raised a slightly different concern, leading to the ultimate issue about concern about substandard accommodation and amenity for the future occupiers. So officers' recommendation is that we essentially remain with the same concern and recommendation for refusal, but I would suggest that if members are minded to agree, that they propose delegated authority for myself just to tweak the wording so that we can, capture what I've basically explained to you today.
Thank you, Ross. I don't want us to come across that we're a bunch of hypocrites, really, because obviously we just a minute ago said about Article 4, Item 4, which was the protocol of written representation, and about how we allow things. I do have discretion to allow things as a chairman. I do feel that I've allowed this on the grounds that it actually hasn't changed the building as such. It's changed the outer area of the building, in the sense it changes the greenery, which is, I'm quite happy to take the original drawing or this drawing because I think it's still the same outcome. But obviously the procedures we've only just voted in, so I did allow this time. But if committee doesn't want it, well, that's fine. You can state that as well. But I don't think there's really any issue, because the building, as far as we're concerned, is where the problem is, not a hedgerow around the front window. Okay? But that's up to committee to decide. So, I'll just hand it to Liz.
Yes, Chairman, just in relation to that, just to clarify that this particular revised plan was received 24 hours prior to the meeting this evening, so it was within our current guidelines in terms of timing. Just to clarify, thank you.
Committee got any problems with that? No? Okay, we move on. We have an organiser. I think we have a written submission, Liz, from, is it Thacker? Mr. Thacker? Or AJ Thacker, which could be a lady, I don't know.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We have received a written submission from the lead petitioner in relation to this item, which I will read to you now. So it says, Dear Planning Committee, I am writing to you to express my deep concerns regarding the planning application 12926 AP 2021-3897 for 49 Beach Avenue, Ruislip. The application involves the demolition of the existing bungalow and erection of a 2.5-storey building containing 4 flats. I have listed below the main concerns regarding the application. Beach Avenue is a friendly, quiet community street. I have a petition whereby I have 63 signatures from 35 separate households that are strongly opposing the construction of these flats. Every house either side and to the front of the proposed application, except one, has signed this petition. Many of these residents have been on the street for 10 to 15 years plus and do not want flats being built near their residential dwellings. Many of the residents were surprised that I had to get another petition signed when they thought the views of the street were clear from the original petition with a previous application number, in that we all vehemently oppose the flats being built. This development is not to improve the street, but merely another opportunity for a developer to make significant profits before moving on to their next project. The views and considerations of the residents must be paramount. We are the ones who will have to deal with the consequences of the proposed development, no one else. The proposed flats are not in character with properties within the immediate vicinity. All properties belong to individual family homes. Having a block of flats would not fit in with the characteristics of the neighbouring surrounding properties. There is an increasing and worrying trend that bungalows are being knocked down to be replaced with huge developments. This is ruining the street view, losing scenic light and space in front and to the side of the street view. There would be an unacceptably high density of people for the property. For the past 30 years, there have been only 2 people residing at 49 Beach Avenue. The new development proposes the building of 4 flats which would contain a high density of people for the building. This would also lead to an increase in noise and waste pollution. If friends or family visit the residence of the proposed block of flats, this would also increase the number of cars parked on the street and the traffic coming to and from 49 Beach Avenue. The front of the property would resemble a car park with a minimum of 4 cars outside the front of the house. The proposed car park would also lead to a significant increase in air and noise pollution that would enter the surrounding properties. Loss of privacy. With the proposed development being 2.5 stories, surrounding properties of this development would lose their privacy. I have lived at 51 Beach Avenue for over 30 years, and this proposal is making my family and me extremely stressed, not to mention the stress that it has caused to many other residents of Beach Avenue. We as a united Beach Avenue community would like to see this development application rejected. And that's from the lead petitioner. Chairman, thank you. We do have another written representation from the agent.
Oh, right, so we don't have Mr. Khan's not present, no?
So Mr. Khan is actually in attendance, I believe. However, he has submitted a written representation which he wanted me to read out. So Mr. Khan says, Objection 1, the objection from the Council is NON2, non-standard reason for refusal. The proposed development by virtue of the proposed footway and on-site car parking spaces directly in front of the main habitable room windows serving flats 1 and 2 would cause unacceptable noise, disturbance, overlooking and a loss of privacy, both real and perceived, for the future occupants of these flats. The proposal would therefore result in a substandard form of internal residential accommodation to the detriment of the amenity of the future occupiers of flats 1 and 2, contrary to policies DMHB 15 and DMHB 16 of the Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2 Development Management Policies 2020, Policy D6 of the London Plan 2021 and the National Planning Policy Framework 2021. And the agent has submitted, as you can see up here, his updated ground floor plan. This is what he has to say. Proposed site layout for the scheme. In response to the reason for refusal, which I've just cited for the application number 12926 App 2021-3897, the appellant would like to inform the Council that in front of the windows to the bedroom of Flat 1 and living room of Flat 2, at least 1.5 metres wide buffer with 1.2 metres high hedges or similar, as shown in the revised layout, which you can see now on the screen, with flower bed and shrubs will be created to ensure adequate visual and physical barrier. This buffer will also not allow the future residents to go or pass in front of these habitable windows, further safeguarding the privacy of these ground floor flats. Additionally, the car parking bay P1 and P2 will be allocated for flat 1 and 2 respectively, thereby further reducing the chance of any overlooking or loss of privacy that may occur due to the proximity to the habitable rooms. Also, soundproof triple glazed windows to the habitable rooms in the front at ground floor level and ensure nuisance due to noise is significantly reduced. The appellant will ensure the details of the windows installed will be duly submitted to council for approval if permission is to be secured. That concludes the submission from the agent. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Liz. Ward Councillor, we have Councillor McWiley, who'd like to take a seat. As a frequent attendee of this committee, speaking for your residents, you know the rules. You've got a traffic light system, and you may remove your mask as long as you're speaking.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. On behalf of the Cavendish Ward Councillors, I strongly support the residents and the officer recommendation for refusing this application. The most recent application has failed to give due consideration to a number of factors that involve our residents. To begin, policy DMH2 of the Hillingdon Local Plan states that the council will require a provision of a mix of housing units. The current housing need in Hillingdon is particularly for 3-bedroom properties, i.e. family-sized units, which this application fails to propose. Due consideration has not been given to the notion of privacy. Firstly, neighbouring bungalow number 47 is built close up to the boundary with number 49. The proposed application shows 2 side windows which will face the 2 first floor windows at number 47, likely to result in the loss of privacy. Furthermore, as stated in the officer's report, the proposed footway and on-site car parking spaces directly in front of the ground floor room windows serving flats 1 and 2 would not result in a loss of privacy but also cause unacceptable noise and disturbance. This proposal has also failed to consider the needs of London's diverse population. This proposed building would not contain a lift, which would mean that accessibility for wheelchair users or those who are unable to access a staircase is limited. In addition, though it is stated that one of the 4 car parking spaces will be a disabled bay, this is not reflected in the drawings and raises the question as to whether this has in fact been given the due consideration that it deserves. Overall, it seems that the proposed development has failed to consider a range of factors that affect not only the residents of Beach Avenue, but also the future occupants of these proposed flats. Therefore, we strongly refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McArthur. That's very good. Thank you. I don't think anybody's got any questions. No? That's fine. You may go back to your seat. Okay, I'm going to open it to the floor. Obviously, Councillor Dillon, you came late, so you're not allowed to participate in this application. So, Councillor Duckwell. Right. It's good to take it off. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the points that have been raised. For me, I'm going to raise a couple of points here, and one that was just picked up there by Councillor McWiley. But for me, I think I know what the answer is, and this is a question of the horse has bolted on this one, given that it's had 2 previous refusals, I guess. But I'm going to raise them anyway. For me, the design is too bulky, its scale and mass is too incongruous, it conflicts with the existing street scene, but above all for me, and again I know we've got a refusal reason for this, but I'll just be keen to hear from officers whether or not there is an opportunity to add some refusal reasons that particularly look and address the issue that we're losing a family home and we're not re-providing a scheme which includes a 3-bedroom unit. We've got, I think, 3 2s and 1 1. So that does conflict with policy, but I do recognise that this has been appealed and been looked at a couple of times before. But I'd also be keen to hear officers' view on the point that Councillor McConnell made around access. But outside of that, I would be inclined to support the officer's recommendation on this, but I'd be keen to hear the views from other members, and of course keen to hear the views from officers as well. So that's it for me, Chairman. Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Ros, do you want to pick that up?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Councillor, all valid points that you've raised there, and essentially, I think, as you alluded to, there is some planning history on here, in particular, a fairly recent appeal where the key issues were distilled by the inspector. So it would be quite difficult now for the council to raise new material concerns that it didn't raise previously or that the inspector has excluded. It would be my recommendation not to do that.
Hey, Councillor Tugwell, is that fine for you?
Yeah, I completely get that, and I've sat on enough of these committees to understand how it works, but my concern is that this will be revised, will come back, and it will still be in breach of a couple of key policies of ours. So, something to think about. The only other point was around the point that was raised by Councillor McQuarrie and the access. Have we got any access concerns on this particular development?
Yeah, so essentially a similar answer applies in relation to the lift access. I would not recommend that we sort of include that as a refusal reason at this stage. In terms of obviously going back to this drawing that we've got now, so I did mention that the omission of the footpaths in front of the windows does raise a sort of more contrived access arrangement in terms of the upper floor flats for reaching their garden. So it's not the same issue in terms of accessibility, but I would be looking to sort of incorporate that in the refusal reason.
Councillor Kaufman.
Thank you, Chairman. After listening to Councillor Tuckwell, Councillor McQuarrie,
want to remove your mask so I can hear you.
Oh, thank you. And obviously reading this very robust report, I'd like to go along with Officer's recommendation and refuse this item. Thank you.
I have a proposer, Councillor Morse. I know you.
No, I'm trying to ask a question.
No, it's fine. No, he's proposed it. You can ask a question now. I haven't said. No one seconded it yet.
I can't find any plans for refusal other than what officers have put forward. But I want to ask one question. If you look at the garden and the private amenity space, have we conditioned that hedge and this view from the window? Is it a sufficiently private amenity space? I mean, I think that's one of the issues I'd like to get an answer to.
Over to you.
If I may, yeah. So in terms of the amenity spaces at the rear, we are satisfied in terms of their privacy and in terms of their size. I'm not sure, Councillor, if you're referring to the parts at the front of the site. So essentially, officers aren't convinced by that green strip. We still think there's an issue with privacy, and we think that leads to a substandard form of accommodation for the future occupiers. So that would be sort of incorporated into the recommended refusal reason.
Okay, fine. Anything else? Second, okay. We'll just have to wait till Councillor Kaufman returns. I do apologise for that. He's said he wasn't feeling very well, so I have given him an excuse to leave. But he's indicated he was here for the whole item. So if we just bear with us for a minute. Will give us a perfect time to get some more chairs for the people that are standing here. So. Sorry to keep. Obviously, we only have a limited number of chairs in here, obviously for COVID reasons. And then if we don't expect all of you to come, it's lovely to see you all. It really is. But if you can bear with officers just to get some more chairs for the people standing in the back there. Although they're used to standing in the back there because they're ward councillors, but. Okay, welcome back. Thank you. Okay, we're now going to go to the vote with the officers' slight changes to give Ros delegated powers. I have a proposer and a seconder. All those in favour, please indicate. Thank you. So that is unanimous. We now go on to item 7. If you wish to go, Councillor, it's fine. If you're here for that item, you may. Item 7, which is 302 Kings Hill Avenue, Hayes. Katie, is it you? Yes. Okay, you take it away.
Great, thank you, Chairman. So for this planning application, number 302 Kings Hill Avenue in Hayes is a ground floor commercial premises currently operating as a restaurant. So planning permission is sought to use part of the premises as a shisha lounge. So to achieve this, what they're proposing to do is have 2 single-storey extensions that sort of a gazebo, partially open structure. So there'll be one at the front of the site and one to the rear. So if I just flick through drawings here, you can see the site there, and this is the existing ground floor plans. So the front of the commercial unit is here, and this is the rear, and you can see what it looks like down there. So what they're wanting to do is demolish the storeroom and office to the rear here, and then construct the 2 gazebo structures. So you've got the one to the front and this large one at the rear. So this would be the smoking area, and they're also proposing to have a secondary customer entrance here from the service lane. So this here is a section of the roof. So the roof on the rear here would also retract, so it will have an open roof. And part of the reason, well, the main reason that everything is partially open is because you'll be smoking, so it's to let the smoke out. This here shows what it looks like on the elevation. So this is the front of the property here. You can see it projecting forward and then to the rear. And so the materials themselves are a metal mesh, mostly, on the bits that, metal mesh bits down here. Okay, so if we look at the site, it's local shopping parade, so you can see the commercial property here. You've got, to the rear, you've got houses, so it's residential at the back. This is Adelphi Crescent, and you've also got residents that live above the commercial units. This is just the front of the shop here, so you can see where front of the restaurant, I should say. This is where they're proposing to put one of the gazebos, and as you can see from the other shop fronts, there aren't any similar type extensions. This is the back of the property, where they're going to be another gazebo at the back here. Also, you can see from the rear that it is pretty much just a service lane with no customer entrances to the rear to any of the commercial properties. Okay, so officers recommend that the application be refused for 2 reasons. The first one is because of the harm to the neighbouring amenity from noise and odour emissions, as well as potential fly tipping. So because the structures themselves are partially open, they're not capable of insulating noise and odour emissions, and this disturbance would also be exacerbated by having another customer entrance to the rear of the site closer to the residential properties on Adelphi Crescent. In respect to the potential fly tipping, because almost the entirety of the site is going to be built over, there isn't any refuse or recycling. Currently they have refuse storage there, but it will be built over, so there isn't any areas shown on the proposed plans for refuse and recycling storage or collection arrangements, so that could potentially lead to fly tipping, which again has impacts on the general amenities of neighbouring occupiers. And the second reason is due to the harmful impact of the extensions and rear entrance to the visual amenity and character of the area. As I've mentioned previously, there are no front extensions within the parade. It has a very consistent building line. So in combination with the unsympathetic materials, this would stand out as wholly incongruous with the visual amenity of the street scene. And similarly, there are no other commercial properties with secondary entrances to the rear from the service lane. So this would also be out of character, provide poor legibility, and it would also result in some of the amenity impacts that is also discussed in the report. So consequently, officers respectfully recommend that the application be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Okay, we have a written submission. Liz, if you want to, is that Hader, is it?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We have a written submission from the lead petitioner in objection to the proposal. So the petitioner is Shahina Hader, who says, please accept my apologies for not being able to attend the meeting. Here is my representation statement that I would appreciate to be read out on my behalf. I'm a resident of Kings Hill Avenue, where the proposal for the front and back extension of Desi Flavours is planned to take place. When I received the letter regarding this matter, I immediately reached out to my local community, and many of us were in disagreement with the proposal. I constructively began an online petition of objection, where I gathered the signatures of 148 residents within 48 hours. This shows the high level of objection from many residents in a short period of time, indicating just how much of an issue opening a shisha lounge in a residential area would be. Some issues that would arise would include unpleasant smells, loud noise late at night, an increase in parking stress, an increase in crime and antisocial behaviour, adverse impact on the character of the area. We also are aware of other shisha lounges in the area, thus making it unnecessary to open a new one. As a community, this is not pleasant news to us, as we are content with the current atmosphere of the area, where it is bustling during the day and settled during the night. I hope this meeting supports the local residents and all of our objections are thoroughly valued. Thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of the local residents. We are positive that you will put the residents first. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Liz. We have the applicant and the agent who is speaking. Is it the agent? Okay, lovely. If you'd like to take your seat, you'll have 5 minutes. The traffic light system is green. It goes amber, means you've got 1 minute left, and then when it's red, I do stop you, and I don't mean any offence, but I will stop you when it's red. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I want to actually start in reverse, if you like, and look at the objections raised by the petitioners, because there's something about them which, in my view, misconceives what a shisha bar is and what this particular shisha bar application represents. The issues that have been raised around parking stress are dealt adequately in the officer's report, and effectively the issue of parking stress is felt not to arrive on the basis that parking that is not available during the day would become available in the evening, and therefore the issue would be simply addressed by default. In relation to antisocial behaviour, this is an established local restaurant with no track record of antisocial behaviour in relation to it and to its current management. If it were to allow a shisha bar to open and it not be managed in a way that antisocial behaviour is actively discouraged, then not only would the shisha bar itself come to the attention of the council and the local police, but the restaurant and its licence would also be at jeopardy. And rationally, there is no reason why they would put themselves in that position. There is no reason to assume that any shisha bar on this site will be anything other than well managed, so that any concerns about antisocial behaviour will be adequately addressed. In relation to the argument that this is an area which is settled during the night, well, that may well be, apart from the fact that there are a number of takeaways and restaurants that are already in the parade and open at night. So that's something of a misnomer. It's not the case that this is a parade that is entirely silent at night and where no trade occurs. That's far from the case. What is there about a shisha bar that people find objectionable? Well, let's look at it another way. What does a shisha bar actually represent if you see it outside the UK? If you see a shisha bar in Istanbul, for instance, it would represent what most people would see as the cosmopolitan Mediterranean ideal par excellence. People sitting around, smoking, chatting. Why can that not be the case here in a well-managed shisha environment? We talk in the Hillingdon plan of the need to develop drivers of the local economy that foster social inclusion. Again, why would a shisha bar not represent that? Why would a shisha bar not represent a place where people come together to smoke, drink coffee, drink soft drinks, some alcohol, and talk? That's actually what the predominant function of a shisha bar is. We're not talking here about a barn on an industrial estate. We're talking about a shisha bar that probably caters to a small number of people, front and back. I'm advised by my client that if the application were to proceed, then a number of amendments would be made in due course in any event. One is that odour and acoustic reports would be obtained, and liaison would be carried out with planning to ensure that they were implemented before the structure was erected, and that only one of the structures, either front or back, would take place. Almost certainly one of them, probably the front, would be discontinued as a shisha and given over only to pavement dining and pavement coffee and drink facilities. Simply put then, the noise and odour issues...
I'm afraid I have to stop you there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, does any councillors have any questions for hang on, you can, yeah, the applicant can just wait there a second. Yeah, Councillor Morse is a question for you.
Can you give any explanation, thank you, for the rear door entrance?
I'm not the architect, so... Can I? Yeah.
No, we'll install the entrance from the back end. We'll keep the bin through space. So
yeah.
The entrance will be open.
Yeah, my instructions are that in fact if the proposal goes forward, the rear development will not take place at all. So
my second question is, how do you think this enhances the ability of this shopping parade to continue functioning as it is?
I think my answer to that would be that even within the view of the Hillingdon plan, there has to be some recognition of the particular situation that businesses are faced with now post-lockdown, and there has to be some attempt to encourage businesses to do whatever they can to take forward their attempts to rebuild. For what it's worth, I don't think, in view of the parade as it is, that a small extended section, as is proposed here, at night, when, on the view of the petitioners, very little occurs on the parade, that any real aesthetic or any other obstructive circumstance would arise. Yes, there will be a small cordoned off area. Most of that will take up what's actually private space. Only a small amount will intrude onto the pavement area.
Thank you very much. I think that's been covered. I'll just remind members that we have to... you may sit down.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Councillor Davis wishes to speak, so if you'd like to, before I say my bit. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Mine's only short, don't worry. I'm here today to support the residents' petition of objection to 302 Kingswell Avenue's application for Desi Flavours to be turned into a shisha bar. Chairman, I ask the committee to consider the residents' concerns with regards to the increased parking stress on the already busy shopping parade. With this in mind, myself and the residents anticipate if this application was to be granted, this could result in loss of revenue for the Kings Hill Parade businesses due to the increased number of cars in an already stressed environment. Also, the proposed rear smoking area poses a concern for residents of Kings Hill Avenue and Adelphi Way or Adelphi Crescent, as the plan shows the rear entrance to the smoking area via an access road that previously has had antisocial behaviour, resulting in shop owners installing gates to stop this. It would be the residents' fears that if these gates are to be left open to later into the night, which would be proposed with a shisha bar, the undesirables would return, and the proposed plan would would increase the antisocial behaviour within the area. Might I add that the height of the building and the surrounding areas would increase the noise pollution with the echoes off of the larger sizes of buildings, and also every other business within the area closes around 11 to 11:30 p.m. apart from the Brookhouse Club pub, which has SIA members of staff installed. Chairman, I fully support the residents' petition. I also support the recommendations of the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Is anybody with questions for Councillor Davis? No? You may take your seat. Thank you very much. Do you have a question? Okay. As I'm going to say to committee, we have to deal with the application that's before us. There is other mechanisms in the council that you can have cafe seating outside the front during opening hours, which is a different department. It's not planning, so you don't need to come to us for that. There's other shops that do that. Whether it she's bars or not will be allowed is another matter. Yes, so I have Councillor Dillon and Councillor Tuckwell and Councillor Morse.
Thank you, Chairman. Two of my points you've taken there, so leaves me with a couple, I think. I have sympathy with the proprietor of the premises. Obviously, are following a pandemic, businesses are struggling and looking at various ways of uplifting sales. But unfortunately, this application is not appropriate for its location, really. We've dealt with many over the years, shisha lounges, and we do know that whatever applicants offer in terms of noise mitigation, it's pretty difficult to police. So that open environment at the back with inevitable noise from people drinking and hustling by, people get louder the more they drink, music playing, it's going to cause a disturbance to the residents above it and possibly behind. No matter what you do, I don't think some of the smells from a shisha lounge are often quite nice, but I don't think that's going to help other residents. It's whether you like it or not. We have a gentleman spoke about the outside seating, etc. Well, this is a permanent outside seating. If you wanted temporary, there are ways of getting that, as you've mentioned. And more appropriately, there are a number of amendments mentioned by the agent. We can only look at the plans before us, and they don't have any amendments, etc., in them. So those kind of reasons that are really, as the officers have pointed out, that I would not be able to support this application.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some good points made there by Councillor Dillon, and I think this committee and Hillingdon Council is eager to support our high streets, and this particular application, this isn't the way to do it. I think there are a couple of points I wanted to raise here. There's two refusal reasons. The first one talks about levels of noise and disturbance, but then it goes on to talk about refuse and recycling arrangements, which I know was a huge concern for the petitioners, and indeed the ward councillor raised it. Is there not an opportunity to decouple these and just strengthen up the issue of refuse and recycling collections and noise and disturbance? Otherwise, is there a risk that they could get lost in terms of meaning? That was the first point. The other point was it was raised a couple of times around parking stress. Now, I note the highways officer who sat next to me, views that there's no objection, but I think it's important just to sort of get a view as to sort of why that is. So those issues can be addressed for residents. But on that basis, I can't support this application. I don't know if Councillor Dillon moved it, but if not, I'd be happy to move it.
No, he didn't move it. No, he didn't move it, but you're welcome. Councillor Morse.
Chairman,
You're going to second officer's recommendation. It's been proposed.
oh, right.
Okay, so you got in there before you, just before you. Councillor Coffin, do you want to add something to this, or no? Fine. Okay, so we'll go with. There's some questions there from Councillor Tuckwell. Does one of your, yes, whoever, Casey, whatever. Thank you.
I think the question was regarding whether we could separate the reason for refusal. So take out that, separate the refuse and recycling lack of provision as being a separate reason, and there's no reason why we can't. So if members wanted to do that, that's fine as well.
Well done, Councillor Tuckwell. We'll put that in. So on that basis, with that slight minor change of separating the disposal, do I have a show of hands to go with officer's recommendation for refusal? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. So if you're here for that application, you're more than welcome to leave. If you just do it quietly, that'd be much appreciated. We'll go on to item 8, which I believe, Councillor Tugwell, you're going to leave. Yeah. You can go and sit in the corners, so it's fine. Okay. Nisha, this is your one, I think. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, Chairman. What's our quorum?
3. It's 3. 3, and it's me, so it's 4.
All right. Okay.
Just about. Loads of absences is unbelievable. Okay, Nisha, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. Item 8. This application is for a flatted development at 32 Norwich Road. The scheme proposes the demolition of the existing detached property and construction of a new part 2-storey, part 3-storey building comprising 8 flats with associated vehicle crossovers, car parking and amenity space. The proposed housing mix is 8 2-bedroom flats. Here is the site location plan, a bird's eye view for context, constraints plan, block plan. As you can see, the site's located on a prominent corner plot close to the junction of Norwich Road and Cranbourne Road. Existing elevations, front and side. Existing rear and side elevations. Existing floor plans. It's a 8-bedroom single dwelling house, so it is a family size unit at the moment at the site. A photograph of the front elevation of the property. I would like to draw members' attention to the proposed to the existing bus stop in front of the site. The neighbouring properties at number 30 and 28. So this photo is from the junction looking towards Cranbourne Road. This photo was taken from Cranbourne Road looking towards the rear of the application site. So this is on Cranbourne Road looking towards the opposite corner plot at number 34. The rear elevation of the existing property. Standing in the rear garden looking towards the neighbouring property at number 2 Cranbourne Road. It should be noted that the site levels change, so the closer you move towards that property that you see, the higher the site is. So it's a gradient rising up from south to north. The neighbouring property at number 2, so this property is at the... Sorry, I do apologise, I've been saying number 2. It's number 1 Cranbourne Road. I do apologise for that mistake, which is located to the north of the application site. A proposed site plan. So let me just go. So this is the front elevation drawing fronting Norwich Road, the side elevation drawing fronting Cranbourne Road, the other side elevation, which would face onto number 30 Norwich Road, and the rear elevation drawings. So this is the proposed ground floor plan. There's 2 flats, if I use the pointer here, that's one 2-bedroom flat there, and another here. These 2 units are duplex flats. They will have their own individual entrances, and it opens or leads to the open plan living room, kitchen and dining room. The proposed first floor plan, so the bedrooms for the duplex flats are here, and then you have an additional 2 flats with 2 bedrooms here and here, and the second floor plan and the last 2 remaining 2-bedroom flats here and there. So in terms of resident consultation, the council received 24 objections from residents, an objection from a local MP and ward councillor, and an objection from Northwood Hill Residents Association. A petition against the application with 59 signatories was also received. These objections primarily concern harm to the character and appearance of the area, the impact on neighbouring residential amenity, insufficient on-site parking and highway safety concerns. These representations have been acknowledged in Section 6 of the committee report. As detailed in Section 2 of the committee report, this application is recommended for refusal due to 8 reasons. In summary, these are: 1, unacceptable harm to the character, appearance and visual amenities of the existing street scene and the surrounding area. 2, harm to the living conditions of neighbouring residential occupiers at numbers 30, 34 Norwich Road. It might be useful if I flip back. So number 30 and then 34, which is to the left, and then number 1 Cranbourne Road, and I showed you the photo of that property as well, so this one here. 3, inappropriate housing mix due to the failure to provide any units containing 3 bedrooms or more, i.e. family-sized units. 4, substandard forms of residential accommodation due to occupation. Sorry, let me say that again. 4, substandard forms of residential accommodation to the detriment of future occupants in terms of insufficient floor space, poor outlook, poor levels of natural light, and lack of privacy. 5, inadequate size, quality and functionality of external amenity space provision to the detriment of the living conditions for future occupants. 6, the proposed new vehicle crossover. If I go back to this site, okay, so it's to do with the bus stop, and they're proposing a new crossover right in front of the bus stop clearway. So the proposed new vehicle crossover located within the bus stop clearway and in proximity to the junction with Norwich Road and Cranbourne Road would have a harmful impact on the safe use of the highway and impede the free flow of traffic in the absence of the on-site car parking spaces to the front of the site. So if I go to the proposed block plan, so at the moment, missed it. So this is where the new proposed crossover is going to be located, and those are the 4 car parking spaces. A highways officer has objected to the introduction of a new crossover here, and in the absence of these 4 car parking spaces, there would be concerns that this proposal would lead to a parking stress within the surrounding streets. Okay, 7, the proposed development would fail to provide secure, sheltered and accessible cycle parking spaces for future occupants, therefore failing to facilitate and encourage cycling as a sustainable mode of transport. 8, in the absence of any lift provision and the lack of details to show that the internal layout would comply with building regulation requirement M42 and M43, the proposal fails to demonstrate that adequate provision would be provided to meet the needs of people with disabilities. If I just go back to the floor plan, I just wanted to talk you through a bit more about the standard of quality of accommodation that would be afforded to future occupiers, because I mentioned there was insufficient space. So it relates to the proposed duplex flats. So these duplex flats measure, give me a moment, I have the notes here. So they're 64 square metres gross internal area, when the London plan requires them to be 70 square metres. So just wanted to draw that to members' attention. And also the external amenity space. So for a flatted development of this size, there would need to be 200 square metres of private external amenity space. In total, 165 square metres of external amenity space is being proposed. The proposed ground floor plan, which is this plan, states that 169 square metres of amenity space is provided, but officers disagree with that measurement. When calculated, the actual usable external amenity space equates to 133 square metres. Also, the communal amenity space would be largely enclosed by the building and overshadowed, because you have a part 2-storey, part 3-storey elevation here, and then you've got another elevation 2 stories with dormers on this side. So we do have concerns about overshadowing and the quality of external amenity space that would be provided. And then all the flats except for flats 1 and 2, which is the ground floor flats you can see here and here, would have private balconies ranging between 4.3 square metres and 8.8 square metres. The proposed balconies would be undersized, thereby affecting their usability, and would fail to comply with the minimum 1.5 metre depth requirement set out in Policy DMHB 18 of the Hillingdon Local Plan. Officers therefore recommend that members refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. Very thorough. I think we've got everything there. We've got now go to the petitioner, which is Mr. Greg Broadhurst. Are you here? Would you like to come to the table, please, sir? As you saw before, we have a traffic light system, 4 minutes on green, 1 on amber, and red. I will stop you. Please don't take any offence, but okay, whenever you're ready.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the residents. I appreciate that the refusal has been recommended, but I feel it important to be here to show our support for the plan officers and the strength of feeling in the community. I shan't go through all the objections to that because that's already been said, so thanks for that. I haven't really got anything of any particular substance to add to the report because I think it covers everything, but I've got a couple of personal observations. You know, all the polite talk, at the end of the day, this is just a crude attempt to cram as many units as they can onto a plot of land without any thought of the neighbours or what it looks like, and I think that's totally wrong. On the parking, I think it's deliberately misleading because it says it's offering 6 spaces and it's in fact only offering 2. You cannot drive over a bus stop to get into a parking space. It's plainly not right. The other thing on the transport, when you read the transport assessment provided by the client, that it's saying that they're not offering the on-site parking, but that's okay because there's off-street parking. That's okay, but that's a beggar thy neighbour attitude. They're first in, they can take all the spare spaces. That doesn't leave anyone else for any spare space at all. And if everyone had that attitude, where would we be? And I note that the previous applications before that this current property was built was a 4-flat development in the style of a semi-detached house, which was perfectly acceptable. In fact, that got what's the opposite of refused? Approval. So, and that's fine. And you know, myself speaking personally, I wouldn't have any objection to that. You know. And that's it really. I think any future development on this site should be in the form of a semi-detached or detached house. I think your point about the family accommodation is really important. There are thousands of flats being built all over. We don't need any more flats. We want family accommodation. Okay? And just in conclusion, I would like to thank all you guys for doing your job and for supporting us. Thank you.
Very nice. We don't usually get thanked, but that's very nice. Maybe sometimes on one side and maybe not on the other. Okay, does anybody have any questions for the objection? No? You may go back to your seat. Thank you very much. Who is speaking on behalf of the applicant or the agent? Is it Mr. Naweed? Yes, if you'd like to take your seat. As I explained before, the system's quite clear. Green for 4 minutes, amber's 1 minute, and red, I will stop you. whenever you're ready. Sorry, can you press the microphone button?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for giving me opportunity to address few issues that came across in a report produced by the case officer. The report that's been produced by the case officer is about 28 pages, and it's the reasons for the application to be refused is only listed, and there no justification was given. Now I hear from the planning officer the justification, but no justification has been given in the report. It was a list of a few 5 or 6 items that, based on that, it was refused. So I'm going by the order of what was listed. Setting, the proposed scheme is designed as an L shape along the 2 main roads, which is Norwich Road and Cranbourne Road. This is a common layout for a corner plot, and it creates a sense of enclosure and provides privacy to the amenities within the development. Scale. The report does not consider the proposal is overdevelopment. Overdevelopment is usually the main criterion for an excessive scale. Bulk. The bulk of the proposed development is on the roadsides and has no adverse impact in terms of overbearing and overshadowing of the neighboring properties. Height, the maximum height of the proposed blocks does not exceed the ridge heights of the existing buildings nearby. Design. In the absence of any distinctive style of architecture in the area, NPPF or National Planning Policy Framework, Section 12, Paragraph 134, Part B, encourages innovative designs and use of balconies. The stock of existing houses in the immediate vicinity of 32 Norwich Road is early 90s, with no architectural merits. It is... Oh,
sorry, can we not have nothing from the floor, please?
You're right, 1930s.
Sorry, can you carry on, Mr.
Okay. It will not be appropriate and innovative approach to reproduce the same boring and unimaginative styles, as we don't live in that era. Balconies are not only an aesthetic feature, but they provide an additional amenity area for the occupants who can come out directly from their flat for a breath of fresh air or green way of drying their clothes. The silver birch tree. It was mentioned that the tree is a mature tree. This tree is not a mature tree. The mature height of a silver birch is 15 to 30 meters. And the height of the tree, this tree is just about 11 meters. That cannot be considered as a mature tree. Additionally, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, or IUCN, considers silver birch as the least concern to be included in the red list. Mixed development and disabled access. Mixed type of accommodation for 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom flats can easily incorporated in this scheme. And also, it's possible to make the ground floor flats all accessible to disabled people. It is usually, that's usually...
Mr. Reid, you have to stop there. Thank you very much. Does any councillors have any questions for the agent? No? Thank you very much, sir. If you'd like to take a seat.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Flynn, would you like to come to the table, please? You don't have the privilege of 5 minutes, you only have 3 minutes, and you know the system, which you're well aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here this evening to represent the 59 ward residents who signed the petition to oppose this application, and I speak urging this committee to go with the officer's recommendation for refusal. I was a member of this committee, as you know, Mr. Chairman, for 6 years. I've been a ward councillor for 8 years, and I have to say, in all my time as a councillor, this is one of the worst applications I think I've ever seen. The fact that there are 8 refusal reasons, for those of you who don't follow these things closely, we normally have maybe 2 or 3 refusal reasons, but 8 substantive refusal reasons, I think, tells you everything you need to know about this application. If I could talk about all of them, I certainly wouldn't be able to do so in 3 minutes, so I'll just pick on a few very briefly. The height, the bulk, the massing of this site. This is a normal, very pleasant detached property which is being proposed to be turned into something that looks very, very different. As you can see, in my view, it does constitute overdevelopment of this site. The design is certainly not typical with this area. This is an area of interwar semi-detached properties. I've seen nothing approaching this design-wise anywhere near this site. We've all seen the issues around the proposed crossover being next to a bus stop. One thing that hasn't been mentioned is this site is very close to a school, a very large secondary school, where children are frequently getting off buses, and I would be genuinely fearful of the impact of that crossover next to a bus stop. There's also a nursery on that Norwich Road as well, worth noting. There's a failure here, obviously, to provide family-sized accommodation, which contradicts our council policy DMH2 of the Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2. It's creating a very disturbing precedent of turning a family-sized home into 8 flats, which, as we've heard, are below the minimum housing standards and of poor quality. And finally, the parking situation is totally undesirable. It fails to meet the council's parking standards. So in conclusion, Chairman, there is very little, if anything, to commend this application, and I really hope the committee refuse it. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Flynn. Just for a second, is there any questions for Councillor Flynn? No? You're very quick in haste there. There you go. Okay, right. Yes, Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's start off controversially. Quite like the design. It's nice, it's innovative, but it's wholly inappropriate for the area it's in. 1930s detached houses and semi-detached houses are also quite nice. And it would be nice to see an appropriate development here. It's very rare that we get 8 refusal reasons, so it tells you how inappropriate this actual proposal is. Way too big. As soon as I saw the pictures before I saw this one of the existing property, I thought we'd be in trouble, because corner plots are often quite difficult to build on, and there are a lot of constraints. So, and then I looked at it, it's like I did almost burst out laughing, but I didn't. Very difficult to get around. I can appreciate costs going up. They probably bought this place for a extortionate amount, and they want to try and cramp as much as possible into it. But it's got to be able to be in keeping with the surroundings and offer the kind of accommodation that the Hillingdon Council wants its residents to live in long term. Floor space is an issue, parking's an issue. I mean, everyone's gone over this. There's 8 reasons for refusal. I propose that we go with the officer's recommendations. There's very little to say on it, to be honest with you. It's terrible.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dillon. Yeah, Miami Beach is probably the right place for it, and it should have solar panels on it. Councillor Morse. Oh, sorry, Councillor Kaufman, I didn't realise you... Sorry. Your mask, please, sir.
Following Councillor Dillon's remark, I quite like that. But it would be sort of probably Cotswood area.
Councillor Kaufman, can you remove your mask from me?
Sorry? Probably be in Cotswood area, and the whole thing would be one dwelling.
Councillor Kaufman, can you remove your mask?
Oh, I'm sorry, Chairman, I keep forgetting this. I can't breathe anyway. Yeah, if this was in Cotswood, in Northwood, this would probably be one dwelling at so many £1 million. So anyway, apart from that, and looking at all the sort of nuances of the report, I can't sort of see any reason to go against officers' recommendations for refusal on this one. I really can't. I am seconding.
You're seconding. Okay. Councillor Morse, you got anything to add?
Much.
Sorry. I think the report says it's all really. I mean,
probably Councillor Dillon is possibly right. It might be a pretty building in a different location or better location, but every aspect of the living accommodation, disability access is totally inappropriate, and under no circumstances will I ever consider voting for this application. So I'm with the proposer and the seconder.
Right, so have it proposed and seconded. Can I show hands of votes to go with officer recommendations for refusal? All indicating? Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. You may leave, please, but please remove quietly would be appropriate. Thank you. Right. Councillor Tuckman. Oh yeah, look at him. He's, yes, please come in, Councillor Tuckman. You need to go. Oh. Yeah, he's going to have a comfort break. We are Cora now, aren't we? We're Cora, aren't we?
Yeah. We are, but did you want to wait?
No, I'm not going to wait anymore. No. Right, we're going to crack on. Can you take your conversation outside, please? Right, so it's item 9, 199 Phil End Road, Eastcote.
Oh, where's it gone?
Well, you can't vote on it then, so we'll have to carry on. Okay?
Thank you, Chairman. This application proposes the change of use from a financial and professional services, retail and cafe, which is use class E, commercial business services, to a mixed use comprising retail, restaurant, cafe and a drinking establishment, which is a sui generis, and retention of awnings and air conditioning units at 199 Phil End Road. Members should note that this application is a resubmission following 2 previous refusals. Please refer to section 3 of the committee report for further details. I will be discussing how this current scheme has addressed the previous grounds for refusals towards the end of this presentation. Here is a site location plan, a bird's eye view, the constraints plan, which shows that the site is designated within Eastcote Town Centre and is within a secondary shopping area as identified in the Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2. The site itself is not located within a conservation area, although it is noted that Eastcote Morford Way Conservation Area is located to the north of the site. And numbers 184, 195A to 173 Field End Road and Eastcote Underground Station are all Grade 2 listed buildings. So the buildings you can see highlighted in brown are listed buildings. Site location plan. So this is the existing front elevation of the premises. It's currently in use as a coffee shop on ground floor level, and this elevation fronts onto Field End Road. This is the side elevation which fronts onto North View, and this is the rear elevation. The 2 car parking spaces that you can see here and here is for the coffee shop. and it forms part of this application. So at the moment, as I mentioned, the ground floor premises is used as a coffee shop, which is cafe retail use. There's also a basement. The basement's currently not utilised. The lawful use of the basement is use class C3, and the basement used to form part of the bank that used to occupy this space before the coffee shop. So on first and second floors there are flats. So these windows that you can see here and on the side, and those on the top floor, those are all serving flats. So if I go to the floor plans, well, you've already seen the photographs. I'm not proposing any external changes, so the photographs that you see is pretty much what's shown on the elevations. What I should note is that the awnings do form part of this application. So if I go back to the elevation, so these existing awnings form part of this application because we don't have consent at the moment. And likewise, the air conditioning units, go back to the rear elevation. So these 3 air conditioning units also form part of this application. The applicant seeking to retain them. So going back to the proposed floor plans, this is the existing floor plan as mentioned. So the ground floor premises, this is seating area. They have a till, customers orders their drinks. And then to the rear of the building, this is where the kitchen is. And they have a toilet here, and then the stairs leading to the basement. And then if you look to the left, this is the basement area. As I mentioned, it's not being used at the moment. So the proposed mixed use would transition from a coffee shop during the day at ground floor level and basement level to a drinking establishment and restaurant use during the evenings and night time. As can be seen from the proposed drawings, the basement would contain a cocktail bar, and customers would access the premises, including the basement, from the existing front doors fitted in the front elevation fronting onto Field End Road. In terms of resident consultation, the Council has received 7 representations in support of the proposal as a welcome addition to the High Street. 2 objections from residents have been received. An objection from Eastcote Conservation Panel and Eastcote Residents Association. An objection has also been received from a ward councillor whose comments have been included within the Planning Committee addendum. The objections primarily concern the over-concentration of drinking establishments and noise and disturbance to neighbouring occupiers. So, as part of the appraisal of this application, officers have undertaken a survey of Field End Road to establish the current mixed use. Out of 120 plus units surveyed, only 6 units comprise drinking establishment uses. On the basis of this survey, it is considered that the proposal would not result in an over-concentration of drinking establishment on Field End Road. The proposal would therefore not be a detriment to the vitality and viability of Eastcote Town Centre. Officers consider that the proposed scheme would align with the objectives set out in policy DMTC2 and DMTC4 of the Hillingdon Local Plan Part 2 in respect to ensuring the town centre's well in delivering a variety of services. Officers have been mindful, if I go back to the elevations, officers have been mindful of potential amenity impacts to surrounding properties to address the previous grounds for refusal. The scheme has been revised so that the proposed drinking establishment would be accessed via the existing front entrance. So here, I'll just point. So customers would access the drinking establishment through the front entrance doors, instead of what was previously proposed, which is under the previous 2 applications, they were proposing the access to the drinking establishment through the rear exit door. Under this application, we have put a number of conditions, and one of those includes the restriction of the use of this rear access door for only emergency purposes. So customers wouldn't be accessing the drinking establishment through that door. And also there have been other conditions which are listed in section 2 of the committee report in respect to a noise assessment management plan and the restriction of operating hours. It is considered that the The proposed mixed use would be acceptable use of the building in this context, and that the proposal would not adversely impact on the living conditions of occupiers at nearby residential properties. Officers consider that the changes that have been made as part of this current scheme sufficiently addresses the previous grounds for refusal, which related to concerns that the previously proposed rear access and opening hours of the drinking establishment would cause harm to the amenities of adjoining occupiers. So given the context of the site, together with their position, modest size and design, it is considered that the awnings and the air conditioning units that have been installed at the site has not resulted in harm to the character and appearance of the area. If I just go to this drawing, this shows you street scene, so there are other premises with awnings on Field End Road, so having awnings at this site is not out of keeping with the area, in officers' opinion. So it is considered that the awnings and air conditioning units that have been installed at the site has not resulted in harm to the character and appearance of the area. For the same reasons, it is considered that these structures have a neutral effect on the setting of the adjacent Eastcote Montford Ray Conservation Area and the neighbouring Grade 2 listed buildings. The Council's Highway Officer is satisfied, subject to Condition 11, which requires the submission of a delivery servicing plan, that the proposal would not present a risk to highway safety, hinder the free flow of traffic, or lead to parking stress. It is considered that the proposal would be in compliance with the development plan. There are no material considerations of sufficient weight to dictate that the application should be refused. It is therefore recommended that this application be approved, subject to the imposition of planning conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nisha. We have comments from Councillor Becky Haggart, I think, which is Liz is going to read out for us.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So, Councillor Haggart submitted some comments on behalf of the ward councillors. As ward councillors, we would like to strongly object to the above planning application on the grounds of policy DMTC4, which places the onus on the applicant to show that there would not be adverse cumulative impacts or cause unacceptable noise or disturbance or loss of amenity to nearby properties. The Planning Committee should be provided with a noise impact assessment proposed under Condition 7 to enable it to determine whether or not there would be an adverse impact as alleged by the objectors. The absence of detail concerning the kitchen layout and ventilation makes an informed decision impossible. The absence of a serving plan makes impact on highways at a key junction impossible to determine. It is unclear if the fire exit does not preclude one of the car parking spaces from being used. The site plan suggests that safe exit may be hindered by the bicycle store and stairs from flats above. On our website, the proposed floor plans amended on the 10th of December 21 are the same as those amended on the 5th of October 21. Are we seeing the latest information? Can this please be considered and read out at the planning meeting, as ward councillors are unfortunately unable to attend? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Liz. I will now go to the floor. Who's going to take me away? Councillor Tuckwell.
Yeah, a couple of points, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Well, a number of points, but I'll raise a couple and let other colleagues make their points. And I think it was stressed. One of the questions I had earlier was what was different between this and the previous two refusals. And I think what I'd like just to confirm is that what we're saying is that because now the rear entrance is no longer going to be used, that's one reason. I can't remember what the second reason was now. But just really interested to know, because I know there's been two refusal reasons for this, so I just wanted to get some absolute clarity around those. The second point, and I think it's on that drawing there, and I think it's been talked about in one of the submissions, that there is kitchen equipment going to be contained in the basement. And I know this is a small scheme, and I know it's not normal, and I know it has been covered off in the report, but surely given the concerns that have been raised, and it is a basement, we should be trying to look to include a fire strategy condition so that we're absolutely confident that there is the right measures in place in the event of the fire measures are in place and they are making sure it's safe for the people using the establishment and indeed neighbouring residents as well. It is heavily conditioned. and there's lots of points there around the noise, but I would also like just to hear from officers, just to sort of firm up, the point that was raised by Councillor Hagger about the unacceptable levels of noise, given that it is a busy high street. But those are the sort of 3-4 points that I'd just like to cover off, if I may.
Nisha, do you want to take some of them? And I think Ros is going to take some of it as well.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, you're correct, Councillor. The previous application had the access to the drinking establishment from the rear. So the ground for refusal was the fact that the existing rear exit door would create unacceptable noise and disturbance for neighbouring properties because Northview Road is a residential street. So under this application, the new entrance point would be from the existing front elevation doors, which face onto a commercial street or mixed commercial/residential street, which is Field End Road. And the second part of the refusal under the previous applications related to operating hours. We have reduced the operating hours now until 12 p.m. The applicant was seeking longer hours, and following negotiations, it has been agreed that 12 p.m. would be appropriate given the context and the surrounding uses where there are other drinking establishments and restaurants of similar operating hours on Field End Road. In terms of the kitchen, there is a kitchen at the moment, but they're not using it to cook anything, so they're warming up food, so there isn't an air extractor system at the moment. Under this current application, if they do introduce the restaurant use, we do have a condition requiring details to do with the air extracting system to be submitted. There isn't any, from the drawing, so the basement doesn't have a kitchen, but they would be proposing one if the restaurant use does go ahead, and it's most likely going to be towards the rear where the existing kitchen is at the moment. So I just wanted to draw that to your attention. And in terms of one of the points that was mentioned by a councillor in terms of the objection received, the existing lawful use of this ground floor premises is use class E, so they could, if they wanted to, convert the existing premises to a restaurant use without planning permission, because it all falls under use class E. However, they still would need permission to erect the air ventilation unit or the air extracting system, which is why we've attached the conditions. So the concerns about the restaurant use has been sufficiently addressed by the conditions in the report. And fire safety, there isn't a specific planning consideration when it comes to commercial uses and fire safety, which is why we haven't included one. To my knowledge, there isn't any planning policy requiring the applicant to provide fire safety details. I would leave it for members to decide whether or not they would want to add that as an additional condition if they were minded to recommend this for approval. And unacceptable noise. I just wanted to draw members' attention that this is a town centre location. The policy does allow drinking establishments within this location. It considers it to be an appropriate location for such use, subject to it not having a detrimental impact on neighbouring amenity. Officers believe that the conditions within the report sufficiently addresses the concerns about impact on neighbouring amenity. As you've mentioned, there's a number of conditions that would need to be discharged, including the submission of a noise impact assessment before they could actually commence the use of a drinking establishment and restaurant at the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cobham, you actually left the building when the report was discussed, so you won't be able to participate in it, I'm afraid. Yes, Councillor Morse.
Well, I know this.
I'd just like to note that I like the idea of a fire thing, but I would like that to come in if the restaurant use comes into effect. Because at the moment, there isn't really a risk of, the wire, if I can understand having a fire if there was fire used for cooking and stuff and things going on, but at this present moment, so if they come back for the restaurant, can we add that with the condition for the ventilation? Is that possible? Okay.
So if we are to grant permission, it is a sort of a flexible consent, so we'd want to put that condition on now if that's the way you were thinking, members, but we could caveat it that it sort of kicks in at that point. One thing I probably would add, and I don't have a big objection to adding on such a condition, but there is a sort of a question as to who would consider those details for us. As planning officers, we're not sort of fire experts. We can certainly sort of ask we can ask consultees, but it wouldn't normally be something that they would want us to put in the condition on.
Okay, Ross, thank you for letting us know that, because I think that's important. So we can, as a planning committee, we can say we want it, and it's up to them then to do it. So we can't enforce it, but I don't think there's really an issue there. None of us will, after Grenfell, and that won't disagree with having those in here anyway. So I would assume that everything. You can't. I'm sorry, Councillor Coughlin. No, I'm afraid you left the bill. I can't allow that. Sorry, I'm really sorry about that. Right, so on that note, can I have a proposer and a seconder?
I'll second.
You'll second, and you're proposing. That's fine. So I have a second and a proposer, and with those added fire condition and obviously the extraction van, that's in the report anyway. Can I have a show of hands of agreement with this? Thank you. So it passes. Is that all right then? That is approved. Yeah. Thank you. Right. Item 10 is Borough Woods Green Road, Hayes. You know it well. There's two parts of this really. There's one that's on a pole and there's one on the building. So I'm going to take them together, but then we'll just vote separately on them if that's all right with committee. So I'm going to take us away, Katie. I don't think we need a lot of explanation on this one, but.
Okay, I'll just go through the drawings, firstly. So thank you, Chairman. As it was said, that this has two applications, so an application for planning permission and an application for listed building consent. So it's the external, essentially what it is, it's upgrading the existing CCTV system at Borough. So there are 4 internal cameras, CCTV cameras, that are being replaced, so that requires the listed building consent. So I just skip through, it's the external of the building if you're not familiar with it. So we've got the 4, you can see the cameras, they're the black dots, the internal cameras there, and then you can see where they're located on the ground floor and the first floor one there as well. So those 4 are being upgraded and replaced. And then externally there is a existing one on a pole here that's being replaced, and there's also going to be, so there's just one additional camera that's going to be placed on an existing mast here. So there's not going to be the installation of any additional masts. It's just using one that's already there but doesn't have a camera on it. So overall, the 5 replacement and 1 new camera would benefit the security of the site, whilst preserving the fabric and setting of the listed building as well as the conservation area. It's in a conservation area as well. It would also not cause harm to the openness of the designated metropolitan land. It's within Borough Park. And as such, officers recommend that planning permission and listed building consent is granted. Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a proposer and seconder for this, or does anybody have questions? Yeah, you proposed and second over the floor there. Tuckwell and Councillor Kaufman have second. I'm going to take those same votes for both of them. Is that okay with the committee? Can we all have a show of hands for item 10? Item 11? That's it? Unanimous both times. Thank you. And then one of my favourites is the last one on the agenda, which is the TPOs. How can anybody not love TPOs?
Are there no yellows?
No yellows today, no.
Slacking. Come for those.
Yeah, obviously your entertainment value is rather low. Right, who's going to take me on? Is this you, Katie? Yeah.
Right, so this item is to confirm a tree preservation order that's being created. So it's for a group of old oak trees on Ravenscourt Close in Ruislip. So let me just show you the area here. So the TPO would cover this area, and this here is just some images of the trees at the rear. So they consist of a group of old oak trees with high biodiversity and wildlife values, as well as contributing to the amenity of the area. The tree officer's report advises that all of the trees have a long life expectancy, so will provide amenity for many years to come. It's therefore recommended that members confirm the TPO. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I have a proposer and a seconder? Councillor Tuckwell and Councillor Dillon. Thank you very much. As proposed, can I have a show of hands for agree the approval? Thank you very much. Unanimous there as well. No, not at all. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and those watching, and have a good evening and a safe journey home. Thank you.